This episode is brought to you in part by the American Homebrewers Association, host of HomebrewCon Online, a virtual gathering of homebrewers happening this June 18th through the 20th. With an all-star lineup of speakers, HomebrewCon Online is an opportunity to enhance your brewing skills and knowledge, all from the comfort of your own home. Tune in for live seminars, demonstrations, virtual expos, meetups, and happy hours. Learn more and register at homebrewcon.org. That's homebrewcon.org. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, June 4th, 2020. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, mead maker Tim Leber returns for the second part of a tasting of delicious meads. In part two, it's mead with naranjilla, maranon, or is it maranon, and a tropical fruit blend. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows. If you go to basicbrewingshop.com, you can find our DVDs or brewer's logbooks and other Basic Brewing gear. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing and find our show page on Facebook as well. We have a cool Basic Brewing app on iTunes and Amazon.com, and we're found all over the place where fine podcasts are served up. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of the stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. Recipes, bonus videos, early releases of videos, including an early release of what Steve and I have been up to lately. We got together last night to shoot a couple of Basic Brewing video episodes. These feature my 15-minute Holler Tower Blanc cream ale and my attempt at a small batch brew-in-a-bag Captinus. It's fun to get back together with Steve virtually. He's doing a lot better, taking his time to ramp up after being under the weather for a while. In the fermenter, I've got a triple, which I'm excited about. This is June, and you're hearing my voice with a new show. If you haven't been listening lately, I usually take the month of June off, but this time, we're not going on an extended family vacation anywhere. And HomebrewCon is online this year, so I can attend that sitting on my butt in my house. So, I don't have an excuse. Might as well put out shows and keep this train going. I reserve the right to, maybe in the fall or something, if things change, health-wise or health threat-wise or whatever, we may take a couple of weeks off at that point. But, just trying to be flexible at this point. I hope that you are all well and safe. I've heard that from a lot of you that you're listening to this podcast as a sort of refuge from hearing bad news, as a sort of oasis of normalcy. I don't know how normal we are, but I'm glad that you're with us. And again, I hope that you are safe and well. You may not be able to go out as much as you're used to find great craft beer, but our sponsors at Tavour are here to help with that. Megan at Tavour says every week they're releasing a new Support the Breweries box on their app. Each box will donate a portion of the proceeds to craft brewers guilds to make it easier for breweries to self-distribute and sell online. You can find out more by going to tavour.com. That's T-A-V as in Victor, O-U-R.com, and clicking on the blog link at the top of the page. If you listen to the show, you know about Tavour. It's a way to select delicious craft beers that you may not be able to find in your area and have them delivered to you. You don't have to go out and put your mask on and all that kind of stuff. It's not a beer of the month club where somebody else chooses beer for you, and it's kind of a surprise. You only pay for the beer that you choose over the course of the month. Signing up for Tavour is free. Just create an account at tavour.com, T-A-V as in Victor, O-U-R.com, and download their iPhone or Android app, and you'll receive notifications for 2 new beers each day that are available for purchase with in-depth tasting notes from Philip at Tavour. This month, look for selections from Fair Isle, Wilmington Brewing Company, Wise Man Brewing, Culmination Brewing, Forager/Humble Forager, Beer Grove, and Liquid Gravity. If you're not interested in the beers that you see, no worries. Just skip the ones that you don't want. However, when you see something that you do want, don't wait. Just click to get it and add it to your crate. Your beer arrives fresh every few weeks, allowing you enough time to fill a box and pay the least shipping, which is handy. Why don't you check it out? It doesn't cost anything to sign up, and there's no obligation to purchase anything. In fact, if I can ask you a favor to go to Tavor.com, T-A-V as in Victor, O-U-R.com, or download the app, and when you sign up, enter the promo code Basic Brewing. That's all one word, and you'll get $10 off your first shipment of $25 or more. Again, it's free to sign up. There's no obligation to purchase. Sign up at Tavor.com or with the Tavor app and enter Basic Brewing as a promo code. You get $10 off your first shipment of $25 or more. That's a good deal. Let's take a look into the mailbag. Brad from Appleton, Maine writes, I just listened to your latest show with guest Tim Leber and was amused to hear him say that not even he would attempt to make a goat cheese mead. Well, Brad says, I'm looking at a bottle of goat cheese mead right now. There's a small meadery a few towns away, and the owner has come across an ancient Viking mead recipe that used whey from cheese making. My wife and I, Brad says, my wife and I own and operate a dairy goat operation here on the coast of Maine, and in the process of cheese making, we generate gallons and gallons of whey, most of which is fed to neighboring pig farms. We were approached by this mead maker to supply some whey for his pilot batch, and we were happy to help out. He simply substituted whey for water in a straightforward mead recipe and fermented it with a wine yeast. Brad says the end product was a crystal-clear, straw-colored drink with lots of honey aroma in the nose and quite a lot of residual sweetness, a bit too sweet for my personal taste. There was no noticeable dairy character present as you might get, say, in a milk stout, but there was something else going on. Nothing unpleasant, but still there hovering in the background. Brad says those impressions were from samples when the mead was quite young, but I'm aging this last bottle to see how things might have evolved. Well, what do you know? I sent Brad's note to Tim, and Tim said, I know that whey adds body to drinks. There's an old American drink called milk punch that's made with milk that gets curdled by the other ingredients, and the solids are strained off. Eesh. Tim says, I've been researching that with an eye towards a Big Lebowski-themed homebrew festival next year. That gives me more food for thought. Maybe a White Russian mead. So, sounds like Tim has picked up the challenge of the goat cheese mead. Hey, you know what's not challenging? Shopping for ingredients at the website of our sponsors, HighGravityBrew.com. Desiree and Dave from High Gravity come from tech backgrounds, and the HighGravityBrew.com site shows it. You've heard me talk about the Build Your Own Beer page on HighGravityBrew.com. It's a whole, well-stocked homebrew store's worth of ingredients in one place, and I'm just bowled over by the extensive selection that High Gravity has. Well, there's also the Build Your Own Brewing System page on HighGravityBrew.com. There you can customize your own system by choosing from controllers, both the Warthog controllers manufactured by High Gravity and from other manufacturers as well, plug types, cable length, hot liquor tanks, heat exchangers, pumps, mash tuns, kettles. High Gravity takes the pain out of propane by making it easy for you to move into electric brewing in the way that you want to. And, of course, there are complete turnkey systems that are already configured if you're like me and you want to rely on something that's already put together and you don't trust your instincts to put together your own customized system. I love my system from High Gravity. You know I do. You see it on the videos. And if you use the code EBC75BB at HighGravityBrew.com, EBC75BB, you can save $75 off your electric brewing purchase. Dave and Desiree have supported Basic Brewing for years and years, and they're good folks. Check out their store online at family-owned and operated HighGravityBrew.com. It's HighGravityBrew.com. was watching the news this week and got to see their store from the air, from a news helicopter, as there was, some stuff happening in their parking lot. Eesh, nervous, scary stuff. Throw your support to Desiree and Dave at highdgravitybrew.com. Okay, now this is the second part of our conversation, and we were a little more goofy in this segment for some reason. I don't know why. It's always great to talk to and sample the meads of home mead maker, Mr. Tim Leber. Well, Tim Leber, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks to be here again. Good to be here again. Can y'all tell we've been tasting mead?
This is the second of a two-parter.
And we aren't even to the real high-test stuff yet. The best is yet to come. Man.
Lord help us. Oh, now we
pick up some of my Missouri accent again. Go to the holler.
Now, if you're tuning into this show, you need to go back and listen to last week's show first, because we did some fun stuff, tasting meads made with Loki, the Kveik yeast from Imperial, both plain and hopped with fruit, and then an ice cider, which every time we get together, it seems like you do something and it's like, wow, something, at least one thing is like brand new. I never would have thought of that kind of thing. The way you did the ice cider, it tasted delicious, but it was also clever the way you came up with it. And then the beet Bochet, Foster Brooks here, the beet Bochet, which, as I said last time, wasn't my favorite, but it was fun. So now we're switching gears. We got 3 left. So what direction are we going to this time?
Okay, so, obviously if you listen to the last show, I kind of like to get off the beaten path some. And one of the things I love to do, is go into an ethnic grocery store and someplace where I normally don't shop, and see what's available, see what's out there, see what kind of fruits are there, and then figure out what I can do with it. So, there's great stuff at the Asian markets, but this case, all these next 3 are all inspired by the trip to the Mercado, the little Latin market that's down around the corner from me, where I get suspicious looks every time I go shop, because I'm definitely not, who the normal customers are, but they've got such fabulous groceries, and the chilies. Oh my God, the chilies. So, but one of the things I noticed was in their freezer case, they had a whole section of frozen fruit and fruit puree that I had never seen before or encountered before. So the first thing I thought of is, I'll make a mead out of those. I don't know what that is. Let's ferment it and see what happens. So these two they were made from the same must that I then split. It's a 4-liter batch, and they had the same yeast. They lived side by side, but their stats ended up a little different. This first one it's called naranjilla. I think I'm sorry if you're a native Spanish speaker, I really am, but I am a white dude, and there's nothing I can do about it.
However, I think it's close. Naranjilla, naranjilla.
Naranjilla. So
I think the double L's is like is a Y sound, not naranjilla, I believe.
All right.
Pardon me, Mrs. Massey from high school, if I screwed that up.
So, in Colombia, this is known as the royal fruit or a royal fruit, and it's said to have an aromatic flavor. And I'm not going to describe the fruit. I'm going to kind of wait till you see what you taste and see what we talk about. But again, this was a little 4-liter batch. It started at 30.6 bricks or 1128, and got down to 1016, which gave it a a wee small alcohol of 15.4%. It's a 14.6 bricks for those of you playing along internationally. And yes, I keep saying liters because I converted all of my brewing to liters. And if you haven't, you should. I've not looked back. It's made my life so much simpler. It's a lot easier to calculate grams per liter than grams per gallon. And if you're a mead maker, that's what you're doing. It took a while to do. It only took about a month to get done. But this is a puree that I bought, and I added it straight to primary. The idea was to really get the flavor of this, I was going to put it the same amount in the primary and the secondary. And after I came out of primary, I tasted it and decided it didn't need another dose of the fruit. So,
did you say what kind of honey?
This is just plain Jane wildflower honey, aka Costco special. Again, I said this before, but I'll say it again. I like that honey for experiments because it doesn't get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's true source certified, so you know it's real honey, but it doesn't get in the way. It allows you to do your experiment and see what the results of that are without then having to try to tease it out from, is that orange blossom honey or is it quince blossom honey or, coriander, whatever else. There's all these wonderful honeys. And this is just doesn't get in the way. And wildflower, if you go just to the farmer's market and get just wildflower, that's a local thing, and that can vary widely throughout the year. So I like the Costco special for experiments. If I do this again, I've got 5 gallons of quince blossom honey, and I'm going to do it with this. Use it for this when I do it again.
Now, this did you do any kind of acid blend with this?
No. I hardly use acid blend anymore
because there's a tartness to this.
It is quite a tart fruit.
Mm-hmm. And it smells somewhere between a lemon and a tangerine. Maybe a Meyer lemon. I'm not that familiar with Meyer lemons, but they are sweet lemons. But there's definitely a sort of sweet, very citrusy, very lemony smell to it, aroma, and not so much in the. It doesn't carry over as much into the flavor, but there is a tropical fruit kind of flavor in there as well.
Yeah,
it's really good.
The write-up calls it has a taste similar to pineapple or lemon.
Huh.
I think it's much more in the lemon for this particular batch, much more in the lemon category. But now sitting here, I wonder if I fermented this with Loki.
Ooh.
And added this fruit, what would I get?
Now remind me again what the yeast was that you did use.
For this, I used D21.
Hit. Oh, no, it's something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
You sank my battleship.
Yeah. I used to play that with my brother. For some reason, I could call every square on the thing, and I never hit any of his ships. I don't know why.
Your brother's a cheater. Yeah. You should have played electronic battleship with my cousin Tim. My cousin Tim, also named Tim, had the fancy electronic battleship, which took like 4 times as long to play.
Yeah.
Boy, this is tasty. It is not super sweet.
No. I did back sweeten it some because it came out pretty dry. It ended up down around 10-16 as a finish, but there's so much acid in this fruit.
Yeah.
That it was really kind of dry and tart. So I added just a little honey to kind of bring it back. And I actually also, because this was going so acidic, the pH was down to 3.1 in the early stages. I added a little bit of potassium bicarbonate to bring that pH back up because yeast doesn't like to be below 3.2 pH. So I brought it back up to 3.27, 3.3, and it was much happier, and it got a lot smoother flavor. So I don't like sodium bicarbonate. baking soda, because I think it gives a salty flavor. And so potassium bicarbonate's a nice thing. You can add just a few grams. I added 0.6 grams, and that's all it took to bring that 4 liters back into alignment. So I like this fruit.
Yeah, I think if you hadn't back sweetened it, it would be. I would imagine it would be astringent, sort of.
Yeah,
but it's not.
It was like lemonade that you don't, made by somebody who's cheap. Yeah, and you're in the South. You go to somebody's house and they're cheap, and they serve you lemonade, but they don't use quite enough sugar.
Yeah, well, you went to my grandma's house, and bless her heart, she I wouldn't call her cheap, I'd call her frugal, because she had the Depression era thing going on. So it's like, grandma's lemonade, and you're like, wow, you're puckering for days.
Yeah, that was my grandma too. She could serve a family of a group of 8 with 1 can of green beans. And have leftovers, because nobody had the nerve to take that last green bean, and by God, it went in a Tupperware and went in the fridge. I love my grandma, but a woman could make a penny scream.
All her pennies were purple because they were bruised.
So, but again, this was just something I was standing in the in front of the freezer section with my phone. You're looking up fruits, and this one sounded the most interesting. The other one I chose on purpose because I was so excited to see it. And this was the one that sounded best, but they had all kinds of stuff in there. So, folks, if you want to get off the beaten path, go to a market, that you normally don't go to, and just poke around, see what's there. Asian markets usually will have some great fruit. There's some very interesting stuff in the freezer sections, or sometimes you go over to the baking aisle in an Asian market and you'll have pandan extract or ube extract. And I haven't figured out a good way to use either one of those yet, but they're interesting things. And again, you get off the beaten path.
Mm-hmm. That's tasty.
And it's very nice.
It's very refreshing.
Yeah.
And without being overly fruity.
Right.
Without being overly sweet or overly fruity. It's just nice. It's what, this is going to sound like an insult, but it's what like a well-made, what I would think the goal of a well-made hard seltzer would be, because hard seltzer is nice. I haven't had a lot of, in fact, I don't know that I've had any, but I think of them as clean and crisp and fruity, yet a little bit alcoholic. This is that plus the bit of honey sweetness also, and so it's that refreshingness and the tartness. But there's that backbone of sweetness there that if the sweetness wasn't there, it wouldn't be as pleasant. But it's all kind of balanced. Yeah.
Well, what's nice about this yeast is it's a fairly clean strain. It doesn't do a lot of stuff. It's distinct. I actually served this to one guy at Mazer last year, and he took one sip. He's like, "Oh, so you use D21 yeast in that?" I'm like, "Yeah." But he's a guy with a lot of deep knowledge about yeast. So, but it's not every mead has to be heavy and big. Now this one is big, but it doesn't taste heavy and big. It doesn't drink like it's 15% alcohol.
No.
No. And that's the danger of my mead for some people is they expect a big beer is going to taste alcoholic, so a big mead will taste alcoholic. Well, not if it's well made.
Yeah.
Not if it's well made. So I've actually had to caution people about drinking too much of this. I did send you and Steve my last 2 bottles, so unfortunately I can't really taste it with you. But I'm going to make another batch of this and another batch of the next one. And, I'm running out of space in my apartment, but I like it. And it's fruity. It's a familiar flavor, but it's also different,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I like stuff that it's hard to put your finger on what exactly it is. I don't like, stuff like grape soda. It's like bomb grape soda.
Yeah.
But this, it's like, what is that? What am I tasting? And since it's something new, it's like, well, what do I like about it? So you have to sit and think about it and explore it. So it's, you're not just swilling it back. You're thinking about it too.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking maybe the next time I do this, I'll go with Loki Kvike, and maybe lower the ABV and let it really run and try to get those tropical flavors to kind of really accentuate themselves.
So we have another Spanish word here next, the maranon.
Yeah, I'm going to let you say that. I'm just going to call that cashew fruit.
The MARANON. So it's an N with an N or a tilde over the top. So maranon, I'm going to say.
Yeah. So this is cashew fruits. In Brazil, they eat this. I mean, in America, you get this nice kind of reddish apple look. They call it a cashew apple, but it's really more like reminds me of like a chili pepper, and then or a mango, and then the nut grows out of the bottom, and they pick them and they pull the cashew off and they send it off to processing, and then they just throw the fruit away, or they'll, like in Brazil, people will make wine out of it, they'll make jelly out of it, they'll eat it, but I mean, we never see them up here. Well, years ago, when I was in Kansas City Beer Meisters, there was a guy, and I think I said earlier that he made a beer with it. I think it might have been a mead. I just remember the flavor, and that he wouldn't tell me where he got the fruit. His wife was Brazilian, and they were great people. So I've always had this in the back of my head. And then I was in the Mercado. I'm looking at the fruit and the thing, and there it is, right in front of me. And I'm thinking, I have to make a mead out of this. So it is different. I like the flavor, but it's one of these things. It's different. I don't think it's to everybody's taste. So if it's not to yours, I'm not going to be terribly offended. I like it because it's interesting, and it's out away from everybody. I
like it. It's sweeter than the previous one.
Yes.
It has a kind of, and vegetal is too wide a descriptor. But
that's pretty close to what they say about it.
But it's like a green vegetable. You know what I'm saying? But it's like a green bean.
Okay.
Or I might need a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you're doing a cold. It's like you're doing a cold reading.
Yeah. Well, tell you what. While you taste and sample and think about it, I will go through the stats. So, again, this one started at 30.6 bricks or 1128 because again it was the same must as the naranjilla. And I split it when I made this because it's just easier to make a 8-liter thing and then split it up than try to do 2 4-liter ones. It fermented down to 0.997 or 11.8 bricks. So it fermented down pretty far. I did back sweeten it, but it had a sweetness to it. It needed a little more sweetness than it had, but it did have some sweetness to it, even without back sweetening. There's something about that fruit that has a little bit of sweetness to it. So this one ended up at 17.9% alcohol.
Yeah, I kind of swallowed a little wrong there, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, it is a big boy. But it started exactly the same place as the other one. But I think because it didn't have the acidity that the other fruit has, it was able to ferment all the way down. And so for those people, and you see this a lot online. Oh, I don't want I don't want my mead to ferment all the way down. I'll use a beer yeast, or I'll use something, where I'll put enough honey in it that it's above the alcohol tolerance that they put on the side of the yeast packet. Well, I'm going to tell you people now, that little yeast ABV tolerance is a lie. First of all, if you got good yeast handling skills and you're doing staggered nutrient addition, which I do with all of my meads, I use the calculators, and I'm using Ferment, so I've got good handling, good skills with it. And the other thing is yeast can't read. They don't know what it says on that packet. First of all, they were on the inside. So they weren't on the side with the text. The other thing is they can't read anyway. So they don't know that they're supposed to, crap out at, 16%. They just think, oh, there's still sugar to eat. I'm just going to keep going. So that's what they do. I am always telling people, yeast do what they want to do, and just let them go. They will, you can stabilize and back sweeten. Yeah. The alcohol tolerance on this yeast is listed as 16%, and I'm a good 1.5% over that.
Wow.
So,
but it
doesn't.
But other than that errant swallow, it's not burning alcoholic. It's
Yeah.
But it does taste. You can tell it's there.
Yeah,
for sure. I don't know. Green bean is not a good descriptor, but vegetal, in a good way, is. But it's. I don't know. It smells. There's.
Do you want me to let you off the hook and tell you what they say? And I also happen to agree with this. Or do you want to keep guessing?
Okay, tell me.
Okay, so how this is described is having notes of mango, raw green pepper.
Oh,
and
well, there you go.
And just a little hint of grapefruit-like citrus.
Okay.
And when I say green bell pepper, everybody goes, "Oh, yeah,
that's it. Yep.
That's it."
Yep.
And to hear that, you'd think, "Oh, that's disgusting. I wouldn't want to mead with that." It's not everybody's cup of tea, I will admit.
No, it's good.
But it is good. It is a nice flavor. And it's another candidate for run that sucker with Kvike and see if you can accentuate those tropical flavors, that mango and grapefruit-like character. Yeah, I only took this and the other one too, I took them up to about 10-15 SG from where they finished with honey. So I don't like mead that is, oh, that's sweet. I don't like that cloying. But I do like to kind of break the tartness and kind of, I keep using this phrase, round things out. But, beer is, you've got a lot of playroom, even in something like a lager, a lot of playroom in terms of the malt and stuff. In mead, you've got a lot of sharp edges.
Mm-hmm.
And, the trick to really doing it right is to, sand those off and to get everything to integrate well. So a little bit of sweetness. And plus, when you tell people, oh, this is made with honey, if it's bone dry, if it's 0.997, bone dry, they're not going to like it if they're not familiar with mead, because you tell them it's got fruit and honey in it, they expect it to be sweet.
Yeah.
And you can get away with 10-15.
And there's some sort of acidity or some sort of acrid. If a mead gets too dry and too thin, then it starts to do some things to your tongue and to your palate that are not complementary.
Yeah, most people don't like it. I like my meads around, like I said, around 10-15, even though, and that's still dry, in that range. It's not enough to go, oh, that's sweet, but it's enough to kind of fill in that gap in that alcohol, because at this ABV, if there's no sweetness there, it's all raw alcohol.
Yeah. You definitely need the honey, the sweetness back. In a beer, it would be the malt backbone. In the mead, it's the sweetness of the honey that's going to compensate for that. Now, you haven't talked. I think you talked about your clarification methods. I think last time, but talk about your stabilization methods. I mean, how do you stabilize your meads before you back sweeten? Because if you don't, if you just put honey in your mead and expect it to just be sweeter, you may have some surprises if the yeast isn't finished. So how do you stabilize that yeast before you back sweeten?
And as I said, the yeast don't know that they're supposed to stop. And unless you sterile filter, there's yeast in there. No matter how clear it looks, there's yeast in there. So I follow a kind of two-stage process. when I stabilize. So when I rack, when I know it's all completely done and I'm ready to rack over and start to stabilize, I will take the pH, and there's calculations you can figure out for how much sulfite that you need based on the pH and the volume. And I will put that into what I'm going to rack into that's already been done with star sand. And I will also put in an amount of potassium sorbate. And then I rack on top of that. And the reason I do that is because the hose goes in the bottom of the carboy, and it kind of makes a swirl action. And that dissolves the sulfide and the sorbate, and also helps mix it into the entire water column as the carboy is filling. And then I let it sit for a while. Now, those two things do two different things, and they're both needed. Sulfite kills. It kills yeast. Just takes care of it. Now, some people say they're, sensitive to sulfite and they're allergic to sulfite, and so you're going to have to figure out what's best for you. But the sorbate, what the sorbate does is, so the sulfite kills, but it's not going to kill everything. The sorbate prevent whatever yeast is left from dividing and rebuilding the population. So I will let it sit there for a while and then do my clarification. So I let it sit at least 48 hours. I prefer to let it sit a week before I add my clarifier. And then the sulfite kills, the sorbate, puts it all on birth control.
Yeah.
And then the clarifier helps settle it all out. And then I very carefully rack off the top of that into another container, and then it's almost always stable. I had one batch that I thought was completely done, that I stabilized, that the yeast went, oh yeah. Fortunately, I got lucky in that it carbonated nicely in the bottle, and it's sweet, and it's a naturally sweet carbonated mead. Do not try this at home. I got incredibly lucky, and I could not duplicate this if I wanted to. Do not count on yeast going above their ABV and leaving residual sugar when you trying to prime in a bottle. Do not count on it, folks. Bottle bombs are nothing to sneeze at. I've seen glass thrown 30 feet from a bottle exploding, and it goes with some force.
Yeah, that's a grenade.
Yeah. I've talked to guys that have had deep lacerating cuts on the meat of their hand, like under their thumb, because they went to grab a bottle and exploded and drove glass into their thumb, and they had to go to the emergency room. So that is my legal warning, people. Do not try this at home. Because the yeast don't care. I'm gonna have a T-shirt made that says "Yeast don't care." Because they just don't. So that's what I do: is I sulfite, sorbate, wait a week, clarify, then rack, and it always works. But again, I will always check in a month in and see. Now, like the Loki we did earlier, I back sweetened that. Well, I didn't back sweeten it, but I added priming sugar to that and let it carbonate on its own. I didn't stabilize it because I knew I wanted it carbonated, because I think hydromels show better with carbonation. Otherwise, they're flat and thin, but the carbonation gives them something to lift.
So again, on the low key,
yeah,
you didn't stabilize that.
I did not, because I wanted it to be sparkling. I wanted it to do its thing.
But there was so little sugar left into. I mean, it fermented bone dry, and then you primed it.
Then I primed it.
Okay.
Yes, I did not count on residual sugar. And when I do make a sparkling, that is always my process, is I ferment bone dry until it's done. Then I add priming sugar and let it, ferment its way up, to carbonate the bottle. And I add a measured amount of priming sugar. And honestly, when I make a sparkling mead, I prime with corn sugar. I find honey to be unreliable.
Just because
I know guys
of moisture content,
what I find is I have some bottles that are fine, some bottles that are flat, some bottles that are overcarbonated. I know guys that do it and have great success. I just I don't have time to crack that nut. So I figure they make dextrose in large amounts, and you can go use Beersmith 3, um, and it'll tell you how much priming sugar for how many liters of mead or beer that you have,
Right.
and just do it that way, and it's a lot easier. So, but I'm a big fan of the stabilize and back sweeten if you're going to do mead still, and I like big meads still. I think if you have a really big mead that is carbonated, it becomes too much.
Yeah.
You know.
That's hard to imagine.
Yeah, there's a line. Well, you might know here in a minute.
Oh. Now
But,
I just uncorked the last one.
Yes. So this is a mead I have had in the back of my head for years.
Did it ferment well back there, or how do you fit the airlock?
Well,
Just your ears.
yeah, my ears pop a lot. It's because it's it's the bubbler going. Yeah. Well, so Dr. Mento years ago, and he's still on there. God bless him. He's still on there. There was a song called Carmen Miranda's Ghost. It was a filk song about Carmen Miranda haunting a space station. And just that phrase, Carmen Miranda's Ghost, has stuck in my head since I was like 12 years old. And I always knew once I became a mead maker, I wanted to make a mead called Carmen Miranda's Ghost. And I could never figure out how or what. So, same trip.
I listened to. I was a Dr. Demento listener when Weird Al made his break.
Yeah.
When Weird Al was sending cassettes in that were recorded in the dorm room bathroom.
Yeah.
With him playing the accordion and his guy, his friend beating on the accordion case for percussion.
Yeah. I remember those days.
I was of that generation. I'm that old.
Yeah. Well, I am not much younger than you, and I remember that I was listening to Dr. Bento probably when I shouldn't have been. So, I remember those days. That was a whole different world then. So that's the name of that song stuck in my head. So I was at the Mercado, and strap in, folks. This is going to be a long list of stuff. So, I went and found, okay, we've got all this beautiful stuff. So I made a mead, a big mead, and I added into it. So we've got guava pulp, mango pulp, passion fruit, the honey, some pineapple juice, frozen concentrated pineapple juice. That's another thing I got from the cheapo restaurant supply store where I got the frozen concentrated apple juice from the last show. These things, you need to look at all these stores, people. You really need to look around because it's just apple juice. It's designed for bartenders, to make Mai Tais and stuff with. So I added some of that, a couple of cans, used yeast called CY 3079, which is, again, kind of a little off the beaten path. Threw some pectic enzyme in there, of course, and some fermento, and put all this stuff together and made this mead. And it is, like I said, it's a big one, and I think I may need to tweak the recipe a little bit because I threw some bananas in the secondary.
You'll
have to tell
that
me what you think.
I think it's good. It's huge. It's a big. It's a big.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. But I gotta say, the first thing that I tasted was banana. I mean, there's a whole lot going on in there, but the first thing that hit I don't know if it hit my nose first or my tongue first, but it was banana. There's a whole lot of other fruit in there. It's a fruit salad of a mead, and it's huge and sweet and well fermented and delicious. But that banana note, it struck a chord.
Yeah. Well, it's a 20-liter batch, so it's a little over 5 gallons. So it's like 5.28 gallons. But there's only 2 bananas in there.
Wow.
But
they were in the secondary.
They were in the secondary, and they were one of the last few things, and because it needed something to fill in the gaps. and I thought the bananas would fill in the gaps. Um, so my idea for this is I'm calling it Carmen Miranda's Ghost. My idea for this is alcoholic high C.
It's it's a fruit punch of a. That's a good descriptor.
Yeah.
Now, for the youngsters out there who don't know who Carmen Miranda was, she was she was a dancer in like the 40s, and she would come on. She was known for coming on stage with this giant, tall hat made out of fruit.
Right.
And there was a Bugs Bunny cartoon where Bugs Bunny was hiding in her hat and eating the fruit and all that. So.
Yeah.
So if you Google Carmen Miranda, that's and Tim and I are not old enough to have been alive when when she was doing her thing, but we saw cartoons and old movies and
we were alive when there were only 3, maybe 4 television stations, and on Saturday afternoon you took what you could get in the wintertime.
Yeah, the Bozo Show on channel, one of the Little Rock stations. After school when I was growing up, they played the thing and that was the cartoon with like Humphrey Bogart and all the stars, Hollywood stars of that time.
Here's one for all you Gen X and Gen Z and everybody in that range. The Chiquita banana label has got a girl with a fruit hat on it. That's Carmen Miranda. If you look on the Chiquita bananas, there's a girl with a fruit hat on. That's Carmen Miranda. So I'm a
Chiquita banana, and I'm here to say.
Yeah. So, we can make more jokes that some of you won't get, but those of us old codgers will find it funny.
It's like your grandpa making jokes about silent movies.
Yeah.
Boy, that's good.
Yeah.
And clean as a whistle. All these are just, the fermentation characteristics are spot on. There's just nothing, and the beauty about that is that once you, have made a mead and you get your technique down, then you can do what you're doing and play with the flavors. You don't have to worry about whether the mead's going to taste quote unquote good or not, whether it's going to have some defects in it that's going to take away from the flavor. You can actually just then start just playing with the paint palette and just mixing things together. You don't have to worry about the technical details. Those are all down.
Yeah, when I when I teach people, I teach a class on mead making, and I give a lot of advice online. I use a fake name online, but I am on the Modern Mead Makers group and the mead group on Facebook a lot. It's not very hard to figure out who I am, but I'm not going to say because the government may be listening. But what I tell people is you need to learn how to make a good, solid, traditional first. Make a good, solid, honey, water, yeast, nutrients, and get it down. And once you have that process where you can make a good, clean, traditional mead, then you can start playing with additional flavors and playing with stuff. Because the problem is, if somebody who knew had tried to make this mead right out of the gate, chances are they would have run into trouble because there's a lot of trip points in this process. And they would not have been able to figure out what part of that was technique, what part of that was, yeast, where they needed to fix things. I take a lot of, samples. So I use a refractometer, folks. I would advise anybody who makes mead to use a refractometer. And you're going to say, but it's not accurate when you get to all the alcohol in it. They make calculators for that, people. They're all online. They're all free. If you have Beersmith, wonderful product. Beersmith 3 does awesome for mead. The calculations are in there. So get yourself a refractometer because it takes a drop instead of a whole cylinder. I take samples. I test it every day. And every time I do anything to mead, I taste it. So I know what is going on during the entire process. And so I can, if things are starting to go awry, I can correct them early. I'm not waiting until it's almost done to start trying to fix things. I can intervene. On the last thing, on the naranjilla, I said, hey, the pH was too high, so I added some potassium bicarbonate. It's because I was taking a measurement, and I knew if I'd let that go, it would have caused a lot of problems in the finished mead, but I was able to nip it in the bud, as Barney Fife used to say. There's another reference for you youngins.
Nip it, nip it, nip it.
I'm Deputy Fife, and I'm armed. So that's another thing I encourage is for you to taste them. But if you understand what's going on, you understand the process, you can make your process is solid. Then you can really, you can get out there and everything's available to you. So I don't think we covered the stats on this. So I'll do that real quick. So it started out at 32 bricks or 1135 specific gravity. Fermented for a few days, added my nutrients. I actually had to add a little potassium bicarb to this as well to bring the pH back up. And it went down. Actually, I added potassium bicarb twice because so fruits have acids in them. And when you have a lot of fruit, and especially tropical fruits have more acid. Pineapple has a lot of acid in it, and pineapple has an enzyme in it, by the way, that is bad for yeast. That is why I always use frozen pineapple and not fresh, because fresh pineapple, if you eat too much pineapple, it kind of makes the inside of your mouth feel a little funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's breaking down the cells on the inside of your mouth. It does the same thing to yeast, people. So I always use frozen pineapple or frozen concentrated pineapple juice. But then it kept going. And in the end, it got all the way down to 0.995, which is 19.2% alcohol. And then I backswinged it with a little orange blossom honey to kind of add a little more. Again, I'm playing with complementary flavors, and I'm trying to add more interest to it, and brought it back up to 1010. So it's a little sweet, but it's not cloying sweet.
And and maybe it's the alcohol that's coming through, but there's a peppery spice coming through too, which is again complementary.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a nice balance. Well, there you go. Again, I'm very grateful, and I know that Steve will enjoy the set that he's got when he's feeling a little better. And I'm looking forward to the next time we can get together.
Yeah, and he can listen to the show and see what he's supposed to be tasting. So
that's right.
See if he agrees. He's a pretty good cook. He may think we're entirely wrong, but
That's right. Well, thank you, Tim.
All right. Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, thanks again to Tim. Looking forward to next time. I don't know when that'll be. Maybe by the pool again next year at HomebrewCon in San Diego. But I'm hoping it won't be that long. Looking forward to a goat cheese mead. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. Please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies always coming your way at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. Talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well, stay safe, and stay tuned. So long.